Have you ever stopped to think how close we've come to the end? Not in movies, not in science fiction, but in real life. From plagues to nuclear standoffs, from asteroids to climate collapse, humanity has walked the edge of extinction more than once. Sometimes by nature's wrath, sometimes by our own hands, and most times it was only by a thread, a decision, or pure luck that we made it through. In this video, we'll explore 10 chilling moments when history nearly pulled the plug on our existence. Stay until the end because the last one didn't happen millions of years ago. It's still flying over our heads today. 10. The Cuban Missile Crisis, 1962. In the tense days of October 1962, the world came terrifyingly close to nuclear war. The United States had discovered Soviet nuclear missiles in Cuba, just 90 miles off the coast of Florida. President John F. Kennedy demanded their removal while the Soviet Union refused to back down. For 13 days, the world watched, glued to news reports, waiting to see if the two nuclear giants would destroy each other. Behind the scenes, warships were on standby, bombers were in the air, and soldiers had fingers on the trigger. At one point, a Soviet submarine surrounded by US warships lost contact with Moscow. The crew believed war had already started and prepared to launch a nuclear torpedo, but one man, Vasili Arkhipov, refused to authorize the launch. His courage under pressure prevented what could have been a global catastrophe. One man, one decision. The world owes him everything. In the 14th century, an invisible killer swept across Europe, Asia, and North Africa, the bubonic plague, later known as the Black Death. It arrived silently, carried by fleas on rats aboard trading ships. Within months, it spread like wildfire. Cities turned into ghost towns, entire families vanished overnight. Priests, doctors, even kings died without answers. Panic ruled the streets. People thought it was the end of days. Between 75 to 200 million people died, 1/3 of Europe's entire population. To put it in perspective, if the same happened today, billions would be gone. There was no cure, no science to understand it, no social media to warn others, just fear, death, and silence. Some historians believe if the plague had spread faster globally or mutated, it could have wiped out civilization entirely. We didn't win, we just survived. You've heard of Pompeii, but Mount Tambora's eruption was something else entirely. In April 1815, Tambora, a volcano in Indonesia, exploded with such force it blasted 38 cubic miles of ash and rock into the atmosphere. The sound was heard over 1,000 miles away. It was the most powerful eruption in 10,000 years. The ash cloud circled the earth and blocked sunlight, triggering what became known as the Year Without a Summer in 1816. Snow fell in June. Crops failed across Europe, China, and North America. Famine set in. Riots broke out over food. Diseases followed. Over 100,000 people died, possibly many more. One volcano altered the global climate for a year. Imagine if multiple eruptions happened at once. The result? Civilization could have collapsed under starvation, chaos, and cold. Mother Nature doesn't always give warnings. Imagine this. A massive fireball streaks through the sky and explodes with the power of 1,000 atomic bombs, leveling everything for miles, yet leaving no crater. That's exactly what happened on June 30th, 1908 in the Tunguska region of Siberia. A mysterious explosion flattened 830 square miles of forest, an area the size of a major city. Scientists now believe it was an asteroid or comet that exploded mid-air. If it had hit just a few hours later, it could have struck St. Petersburg, killing millions. And here's the terrifying part. We had no idea it was coming. In 1908, there were no satellites, no telescopes scanning the skies. We didn't even realize how close we came until decades later. On September 26, 1983, at the height of the Cold War, Soviet early warning systems flashed a terrifying alert. The US had launched 5 nuclear missiles. In Moscow, panic buzzed beneath the surface. Protocol demanded immediate retaliation. The clock was ticking, minutes from a possible world-ending war. But one man, Stanislav Petrov, stared at the blinking screens and thought, this doesn't make sense. He chose not to report the launch to his superiors. He was right. It was a false alarm, caused by a glitch in the system. If he had followed orders, the Soviets would have launched a counterattack. The US would have responded. The world would have burned. No heroic battle, no warning sirens, just lights in the sky. Then nothing. Petrov saved the world, not with weapons, but with doubt. Climate change. A slow-motion disaster. Not all threats come with a countdown. Some creep in, quiet, invisible, and persistent. Climate change is one of the greatest challenges humanity has ever faced. Rising temperatures are melting glaciers, raising sea levels, fueling wildfires, and making droughts more common. Millions of people are already being displaced by extreme weather. If global warming continues unchecked, entire cities may sink, food systems could collapse, and fresh water may become a rare resource. It could spark mass migration, economic collapse, and global conflict. And while we may not see a mushroom cloud, the devastation could be just as deadly, only slower. Unlike some past disasters, this one is still within our power to stop, but the clock is ticking. The first atomic bomb. 1945. When scientists tested the first atomic bomb in the New Mexico desert in July 1945, they weren't completely sure what would happen. Some even feared the explosion might ignite the atmosphere and destroy the Earth. They still went ahead. The test, codenamed Trinity, lit up the desert with a blinding flash. A mushroom cloud towered into the sky, and in that moment humanity had crossed a threshold it could never undo. The atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki killed over 200,000 people. But far more terrifying is this. Since then, over 13,000 nuclear warheads remain in existence. Enough to wipe out the planet many times over. The genie is out of the bottle and it's still very much awake. Just as the world was recovering from World War I, a new enemy struck, one without borders or bullets. The Spanish flu swept across the globe in 1918, infecting more than 500 million people, nearly a third of humanity. What made it so deadly? Unlike most viruses that target the old and weak, this flu struck healthy young adults with a vengeance. Their immune systems overreacted, causing their lungs to fill with fluid, suffocating them. Hospitals collapsed, morgues overflowed, cities enforced quarantines, some towns were wiped out. Estimates suggest between 50 to 100 million people died, far more than in the war, and, unlike COVID-19, this pandemic came when there were no vaccines, no antivirals, no digital warnings. It was a silent, invisible reaper, and it nearly shattered the world. Over 3,000 years ago, powerful civilizations ruled the Mediterranean. The Egyptians, Hittites, Mycenaeans and others had advanced trade, architecture and writing systems. And then, suddenly, they all fell. Cities burned, palaces crumbled, writing disappeared. It was as if the lights of civilization were switched off across the region. What caused it? Historians believe a combination of earthquakes, invasions by the mysterious sea peoples, famine and climate change all struck at once. Society collapsed into chaos, trade routes vanished, knowledge was lost, entire cultures disappeared. It took hundreds of years to rebuild, and the scary part, our modern world is just as interconnected and vulnerable to collapse. History doesn't repeat, but it often rhymes. 66 million years ago, a 6-mile-wide asteroid slammed into what is now Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. The impact released energy 1 billion times more powerful than the bombs dropped in World War II. It triggered tsunamis, global wildfires, and a nuclear winter that blocked the sun for years. 75% of all life on Earth went extinct, including the dinosaurs. But here's the twist. Earth hasn't stopped getting hit. NASA tracks thousands of near-Earth asteroids, many of them large enough to repeat history. Some come alarmingly close. One small miscalculation on one missed rock, and we could share the dinosaurs' fate. We don't just live in history, we live in its shadow. These 10 moments remind us that history isn't always about kings and empires. Sometimes it's about survival, about how close we came to disappearing, but humanity is stubborn. We've survived plague, fire, ice, war, and our own foolishness. Still, many of these disasters were avoided not because we were prepared, but because of chance or courage from a few unknown heroes. The next threat could come tomorrow, or in 1,000 years. But one thing is certain, if we know our past, we can better protect our future. If this video made you think, make sure to like, subscribe, and share. Because history doesn't just belong in books, it belongs in all of us. Stay curious, stay cautious, and stay human.